Imagine waking up one day and realizing that nothing around you truly means anything. The news, the endless social media posts, the constant stream of information, it all feels hollow. You scroll, you watch, you consume, yet deep inside, you feel emptier than ever. Have you ever wondered why? Why do so many people today feel detached, directionless, or indifferent to life itself? Why is nihilism, the belief that life has no inherent meaning, silently becoming the default philosophy of our age? In today's video, we are going to explore this question in depth. We will uncover how modern culture, technology, and even our own psychological structures have led us into a quiet crisis of meaning. We'll examine the thinkers who foresaw this transformation, and more importantly, we'll discover what can be done to rise above it. Stay until the very end, because the last revelation might completely change the way you see yourself and the world. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your participation helps us bring more deep and transformative content like this. What you are about to hear might challenge your beliefs, but it could also awaken a new understanding of who you are and what truly matters. Let's begin. Nihilism didn't just appear overnight. Its roots trace back centuries, but it was in the modern era, the age of reason, science, and industrial progress, that it began to spread like a silent fog. When Friedrich Nietzsche declared, "God is dead and we have killed him," he wasn't speaking about a literal death of a deity, but about the collapse of shared meaning. Humanity, he said, had dismantled the moral and spiritual structures that gave life purpose, and now we were left staring into the abyss, uncertain of what to believe. Think about it. Our ancestors found meaning through religion, community, tradition, and the natural world. Today we seek meaning through consumption, entertainment, and endless digital stimulation. The result? A generation more connected than ever, yet profoundly alone. A society flooded with information, but starving for wisdom. Modern nihilism isn't the dramatic kind we read about in philosophy books. It's subtle. It's the quiet resignation that says, nothing really matters. It's the apathy that keeps us scrolling instead of acting, numbing instead of feeling. It's hidden behind humor, behind irony, behind the endless distractions we use to avoid confronting the void inside. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, observed something profound. Those who lost their sense of purpose were the first to give up. He wrote that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. If that was true even in the darkest of times, what does it say about our world today, where comfort is abundant but meaning is scarce? Nihilism thrives where meaning decays, and meaning decays when everything becomes relative, when nothing is sacred, and when the only value that remains is personal pleasure. Modern society has replaced faith with algorithms, community with individualism, and depth with distraction. Our gods are now screens, our prayers are notifications, and our rituals are clicks and swipes. But the question we must ask ourselves is this: are we truly free without meaning, or are we slaves to our own emptiness? Look around. How often do people pursue goals they secretly don't believe in? How many live for validation, not conviction? We chase careers for prestige, relationships for comfort, pleasures for escape, and yet, when the lights go out and silence returns, something inside us whispers that none of it feels real. That whisper is nihilism, and it's growing louder. Philosophers like Albert Camus tried to confront it head-on. Camus argued that even if life has no ultimate meaning, we must rebel against the absurd by creating our own purpose. In his view, the struggle itself, the act of living consciously, is what gives life value. The meaning of life, he wrote, is whatever you give it. But in our age of passive consumption, how many still have the strength to create meaning rather than simply consume it? Perhaps that's the tragedy of modern nihilism. It's not dramatic despair, but quiet indifference. It's the slow erosion of significance in a world overflowing with choice. And yet, there's another way to see it. Nietzsche himself believed that nihilism was not the end, but a necessary transformation, a cleansing fire that could burn away false values and make room for something higher. Maybe what we're witnessing today is not the death of meaning, but the labor pains of its rebirth. In the next part, we'll explore how this subtle but powerful philosophy has infiltrated modern culture through art, media, and even social behavior, shaping the way we think, feel, and define ourselves without us even realizing it. If you look closely, you'll see that nihilism has already woven itself into the fabric of our culture. It's not an abstract philosophy locked inside dusty books. It's alive in our movies, music, art, and the way we relate to one another. Modern culture celebrates detachment. We are told to not care too much, to go with the flow, to live for the moment. At first, it sounds liberating, but behind that apparent freedom hides something darker, the quiet despair of a generation that no longer believes in anything beyond itself. Turn on the television or open social media, and you'll see it everywhere. Irony replaces sincerity. Cynicism replaces hope. Humor is now a shield to mask discomfort with reality. Memes and online jokes have become the language of our collective apathy, the way we laugh at our pain to avoid truly feeling it. When everything is reduced to a joke, nothing matters anymore. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard warned of this very danger in the 19th century when he wrote about the despair of meaninglessness, where people live in constant distraction to avoid facing the emptiness within. But this cultural nihilism didn't appear out of nowhere. It was born from a century of disillusionment. 2 world wars, political corruption, economic crises, and the collapse of traditional belief systems shattered our confidence in the old narratives. We entered a new era, one that promised liberation through science, technology, and reason. Yet that very liberation also dismantled the comforting illusions that once gave life structure. The modern human became a wanderer, free, yes, but lost in a world without direction. And that loss of direction seeps into everything. It's in the art that glorifies chaos, the music that celebrates despair, the advertisements that sell happiness but deliver emptiness. We are told to be ourselves, but no one tells us what that means. We are told to follow our dreams, but most don't know what those dreams are anymore. When every path seems meaningless, the only thing left to worship is the self, and yet even that self feels unstable, constantly shifting under the weight of social comparison and digital performance. The psychiatrist Carl Jung believed that the human soul cannot survive without a sense of meaning, without a connection to something greater than the ego. When society loses its myths, its symbols, and its higher ideals, the unconscious compensates through anxiety, depression, and inner chaos. Jung warned that if we don't find new meaning to replace the old, the void would consume us from within. Today we see his prediction fulfilled. Rates of loneliness, mental illness, and existential anxiety are skyrocketing, especially among younger generations. We are living in what Jung might have called a collective dark night of the soul. Ask yourself, how often do you see people who seem alive on the outside but empty inside? Smiling for the camera, chasing trends, living fast, but behind those filters, there's a quiet hunger for something real. Have you ever felt that too? That faint, unspoken sense that something essential is missing, though you can't quite name it. That's the silent echo of meaning calling out from the depths of the soul. Philosophically, nihilism is not just the belief that life lacks meaning. It's the logical consequence of a society that treats everything as material, measurable, and transactional. When money becomes the only language that matters, and pleasure the only pursuit worth chasing, everything sacred turns into a commodity. Even love becomes a contract, friendship becomes a connection request, and self-worth becomes a number on a screen. The sacred becomes superficial. But here's the paradox. Deep down, we still crave meaning. Even those who claim not to believe in anything still yearn for something to believe in. The human heart cannot live in a vacuum. That's why, when traditional sources of meaning fade, we unconsciously replace them with new idols. Fame, success, power, or even outrage. In the absence of a spiritual compass, we worship whatever makes us feel something. And yet that feeling never lasts. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre described this as the nausea of existence, the unbearable awareness that life continues endlessly without a final purpose. We keep searching for something to fill the void, but the more we search, the deeper it becomes. This is the psychological loop of modern nihilism, the pursuit of significance in a world that has forgotten what significance means. However, there is a crucial insight hidden here, the same one Nietzsche hinted at. Nihilism is not just destruction, it's also opportunity. When the old meanings collapse, new ones can emerge, but only if we have the courage to face the void rather than flee from it. That confrontation, the ability to stare into nothingness and still choose to create meaning, is what separates despair from awakening. In the next part, we will explore how nihilism manifests in our personal lives, in our relationships, our work, and our sense of identity, and how understanding its roots can help us break free from its grip. Because the real battle is not out there in the world, it's within us. Nihilism is not just an abstract idea, it lives quietly within us. It shapes the way we think, how we love, and how we see ourselves. Its presence can be subtle, a lack of motivation, a sense of detachment, or a quiet belief that nothing we do truly matters. We often mistake this feeling for laziness or apathy, but in truth, it's the symptom of a deeper crisis, a spiritual disconnection that leaves the modern individual wandering through life without an inner compass. In the past, people found meaning in belonging to a tribe, a faith, a family, or a cause greater than themselves. Today, individuality is glorified, but that very freedom has come with a cost. The philosopher Erich Fromm once wrote that when man becomes completely free from external authority, he must then take on the responsibility of creating his own meaning, and that, he said, is terrifying. Many people are not prepared for that responsibility. They are free but frightened. They have everything, yet feel nothing. You can see this quiet despair in everyday life. The worker who spends years climbing a corporate ladder only to realize there's no fulfillment at the top. The influencer who gains millions of followers but feels more isolated than ever. The student who studies relentlessly for a future they no longer believe in. These are not failures of ambition. They are symptoms of a deeper hunger, a hunger for meaning in a world that has forgotten how to nourish the soul. Carl Jung would have called this a loss of the self. When the individual no longer connects to their inner essence, that deep instinctual source of wisdom and purpose, the ego becomes inflated, lost in illusions of control and achievement. The outer world becomes everything, and the inner world fades into silence. But the unconscious never disappears. It only grows louder, manifesting through anxiety, restlessness, and depression. These are not signs of weakness. They are signals from the soul, urging us to awaken. Perhaps you felt this too. That quiet voice within asking, "What's the point?" It comes when life feels repetitive, when success feels hollow, when pleasure no longer satisfies. It is the whisper of nihilism, inviting you to surrender, to drift through existence without meaning or direction. But it is also an invitation to something else, the possibility of transformation. Because when everything you once believed in collapses, you are finally free to rebuild your world from truth. Philosophers like Camus and Nietzsche both saw this collapse not as the end of meaning, but as a necessary test. Nietzsche believed that humanity had to endure the death of its false gods, moral, religious, or ideological, before it could give birth to a new, stronger spirit. Camus called this moment the absurd. For him, the absurd was not to be feared, but embraced. To live without ultimate meaning and still choose to love, to act, to create. That was his rebellion against despair. And that is perhaps the most radical act in a nihilistic world. To care, to feel deeply even when nothing guarantees that it matters. To build, even when everything seems temporary. To love, even when loss is inevitable. Because meaning is not something we find. It's something we forge moment by moment through conscious living. But here lies the paradox. Our society rewards distraction, not consciousness. We are taught to escape discomfort rather than confront it. The moment silence appears, we reach for our phones. The moment sadness rises, we seek stimulation. Yet it is precisely in those moments of stillness that meaning begins to form. Silence, solitude, and suffering, these are not our enemies. They are the raw materials of the soul's awakening. Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, wrote that the greatest freedom of all is the freedom to choose one's attitude in any situation. Even in the most horrific conditions imaginable, he discovered that those who held on to meaning, even something as simple as love, faith, or duty, could endure the unbearable. His lesson was clear. Meaning is not given by life, it is created by how we respond to it. So what happens when an entire generation stops creating meaning and begins to drift through existence passively? We become spectators of our own lives. We watch others live through screens, through stories, through illusions, while our own potential remains dormant. Nihilism thrives in passivity. It feeds on inaction. The moment we stop choosing, It chooses for us. And yet, deep down, the human spirit resists. No matter how cynical the world becomes, there's something in us that still longs to believe, to create, to connect. You can see it in the rise of new spiritual movements, in the search for authenticity, in the longing for purpose that so many people feel but can't name. The hunger for meaning has not died. It has simply been buried under noise. In the next part, we will uncover how to confront nihilism directly, not by denying it, but by transforming it. We will explore how to rediscover purpose, rebuild connection, and awaken a deeper sense of being. Because the truth is, nihilism is not the enemy. It's the shadow of our unfulfilled potential. And once we understand it, we can finally transcend it. If nihilism is the shadow of our age, then the task before us is not to destroy it, but to understand what it is trying to teach us. Every great transformation in human consciousness begins with a collapse, the death of old values, the disintegration of beliefs, the silence that follows when meaning disappears. And in that silence, something sacred waits to be born. To overcome nihilism, we must first face it without fear. We must dare to look into the void and not run away. The void is not our enemy. It is the mirror in which we finally see ourselves without illusions. It strips away what is false, the borrowed beliefs, the artificial goals, the masks we wear, and forces us to confront the question that no one else can answer for us. What gives your life meaning? The answer will not come from society, from religion, or from technology. It will come from within, from the part of you that refuses to give up, even when nothing makes sense. Nietzsche called this inner force the will to power, not in the sense of domination over others, but as the deep drive to affirm life, to say yes, even to suffering, to chaos, to uncertainty. When you can say yes to existence, even in its absurdity, nihilism loses its power over you. The modern world teaches us to seek comfort, but meaning is never born from comfort. It is born from struggle, from the decision to face pain consciously rather than escape it. Viktor Frankl reminded us that suffering, when accepted with purpose, ceases to be suffering. It becomes transformation, and that is the hidden secret of nihilism. When we embrace the void instead of fearing it, it becomes fertile ground for new meaning to grow. Think of the artist who creates beauty in a broken world, the parent who chooses love in uncertain times, the thinker who questions when everyone else conforms. These people are not escaping nihilism. They are transcending it through action. They are proving that even in a meaningless universe, meaning can still be created, not as an illusion, but as a conscious act of rebellion. Carl Jung believed that when the old gods die, the human psyche must give birth to new symbols, new myths that reflect our evolving consciousness. The modern world may have lost its connection to the divine, but that doesn't mean the sacred has disappeared. It has simply moved inward. The temple is no longer a building of stone, and it is the human soul. Each of us carries within us the potential to rediscover that sacred dimension of life, to reconnect with something greater than ourselves. So how do we begin? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to the moments when you feel that emptiness rising, not as something to fear, but as a signal. That emptiness is the invitation to go deeper. It is the doorway to authenticity. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? What am I willing to suffer for? What gives me the sense that I am alive? The answers to those questions are the seeds of your personal meaning. The second step is creation. Don't wait for meaning to appear. Create it through your actions, your choices, your relationships. Meaning grows wherever we invest our time and energy consciously. It may begin small, a daily ritual, a creative project, an act of kindness, but every authentic act pushes back against the tide of nihilism. Every moment of presence is a defiance of emptiness. And finally, the third step is connection. Nihilism isolates. It whispers that we are alone, that nothing connects us. But the truth is, we are profoundly interconnected, to one another, to nature, to the cosmos itself. When you begin to see yourself not as a separate observer, but as a living part of this vast, mysterious whole, life regains its depth. The sacred returns, not as dogma, but as direct experience. Albert Camus once wrote that the only true philosophical question is whether life is worth living. His answer was yes, not because life is easy, but because it is absurd, unpredictable, and yet somehow beautiful. The struggle itself, he said, is enough to fill a man's heart. And perhaps that is the ultimate cure to nihilism, to embrace existence as it is, imperfect, fleeting, yet profoundly meaningful when lived with awareness and love. So maybe nihilism is not the darkness that destroys us, but the night through which we must travel to find the dawn. It is the silence before the song, the pause before creation, the death before rebirth. The fact that we can even ask what meaning is, that we can yearn for it, proves that something within us already knows the answer. The question now is, will we continue to drift through life numb and disconnected, or will we dare to awaken? Will we let the noise of the world drown out our inner voice, or will we begin to listen? Because meaning is not hidden from us. It is waiting in the very heart of our being, quietly asking to be remembered. If you've stayed with me until now, perhaps you already feel it, that subtle spark of awareness, that stirring inside that whispers, there must be more, and there is. The journey doesn't end here. It begins with the decision to look within and create meaning no matter what. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I would love to know what meaning you are creating in your own life. And remember, the final truth of nihilism is not that nothing matters, but that everything can matter if you choose to make it so. Thanks for looking.